The air hung heavy with the acrid stench of gunpowder and the metallic tang of blood. Screams and cannon fire punctuated the chaos as Colonel John Herncastle, his uniform stained with sweat and grime, stormed into the ancient temple. His boots thundered against the worn stone floor, drowning out the frightened whispers of cowering priests. There, atop a weathered statue of a many-armed deity, the moonstone gleamed. Its yellow brilliance seemed to mock the carnage outside, a captured star amidst the smoke and ruin. Herncastle's eyes glittered with a mixture of greed and triumph as he approached. Without a moment's hesitation, he wrenched the gem from its resting place. The diamond pulsed in his palm, warm and alive, as if infused with an otherworldly energy. A shiver ran down Herncastle's spine, but he pushed the feeling aside, focusing on his prize. Unbeknownst to him, 3 Brahmin priests witnessed the theft. Their faces, etched with lines of age and wisdom, contorted in horror and determination. A silent agreement passed between them: they would recover the sacred stone, no matter the cost. To them, the moonstone was more than a mere gem, it was a divine artifact, believed to be under the protection of the Hindu god Vishnu himself. As Herncastle turned to flee, the priests' voices rose in unison, uttering words that would haunt him for years to come. Misfortune, they intoned, their voices carrying an eerie resonance, shall befall any who dare to possess what is not rightfully theirs. The curse seemed to cling to the diamond like a shadow, invisible yet palpable. The journey back to England was a nightmare for Herncastle. Every creak of the ship's timbers, every whisper of wine through the rigging, seemed to carry the echo of the curse. The moonstone, once a coveted prize, now felt like a lead weight in his pocket, growing heavier with each passing day. Upon his return, Herncastle retreated to his country house, a once grand estate now shrouded in an air of neglect and foreboding. The rooms that had once echoed with laughter and life now stood silent, save for the colonel's restless pacing. Dust motes danced in the weak sunlight that filtered through grimy windows, painting everything in a sickly yellowish hue. Nights became a torment. In his dreams, Herncastle saw the accusing eyes of the Brahmin priests, heard their whispered curses. He would wake, drenched in sweat, his hand instinctively reaching for the moonstone hidden beneath his pillow. The gem's cool surface offered little comfort against the fever of his fears. His family, alarmed by the change in him, tried to intervene. They spoke in hushed tones of the diamond's dark reputation, of the misfortune that seemed to follow in its wake. "Get rid of it," they pleaded, their voices a mixture of concern and fear. "Before it's too late." But Herncastle, his mind clouded by paranoia and obsession, clung to the stone with a fervor that bordered on madness. The moonstone had become more than a possession, it was a part of him, a glittering symbol of his defiance against the forces he believed were arrayed against him. As the years passed, Herncastle's world shrank to the confines of his house. The windows were shuttered, the doors bolted. He became a shadow of his former self, a man consumed by fear and fascination in equal measure. His once proud military bearing gave way to a hunched, furtive demeanor, his eyes darting constantly as if expecting danger from every corner. In the quiet of his self-imposed exile, Herncastle would sometimes take out the moonstone, letting its yellow light play across his haggard features. In those moments, a spark of the old fire would return to his eyes, only to be quickly extinguished by the weight of his paranoia. The diamond's facets seemed to hold 1,000 accusing eyes, each one a silent judge of his actions. And so, Colonel John Herncastle, once a respected officer, became a recluse, his life dominated by the fear and fascination of the cursed diamond. The moonstone, with its promise of misfortune, had claimed another victim, leaving Herncastle trapped in a prison of his own making, forever haunted by the consequences of that fateful day in Seringapatam. As the years wore on, rumors swirled about the fate of the infamous moonstone and its reclusive owner. Some said Herncastle had gone mad, others that he had died alone in his decaying mansion. But as the colonel's health began to fail, he made one final, unexpected decision. With trembling hands, he penned his last will and testament, its contents a closely guarded secret. Little did anyone know that this document would soon set in motion a chain of events that would shake the very foundations of the Herncastle family. For within its pages lay a shocking bequest, one that would bring the curse of the moonstone to a new generation, and with it, a legacy of mystery, danger, and untold consequences. Colonel Herncastle's death had left his will shrouded in mystery for years. Now, as the document was finally revealed, it bore an unexpected surprise. The infamous moonstone was to be bequeathed to his niece, Rachel Verinder, as an 18th birthday gift. Franklin Blake, Rachel's cousin and the executor of the will, felt a chill run down his spine as he absorbed the weight of this revelation. The responsibility settled on his shoulders like a heavy, damp cloak, threatening to suffocate him. As he journeyed to the Verinder estate, the diamond nestled securely in his breast pocket. Each bump and jolt of the carriage reminded him of its presence. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was carrying more than just a precious stone, he was transporting a legacy steeped in darkness and intrigue. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the rolling English countryside as the Verinder estate came into view. The grand old house stood proud against the backdrop of ancient oaks, their leaves rustling in a breeze that carried the scent of freshly cut grass and distant rain. Through the windows, Franklin could see figures darting to and fro. The household was abuzz with preparations for Rachel's impending birthday celebration. As Franklin approached the entrance, the gravel crunching beneath his feet, Lady Verinder emerged to greet him. Her usual warm smile was strained, her eyes clouded with worry. "Oh, Franklin," she sighed, her voice barely above a whisper, "I fear this diamond brings nothing but trouble. The stories I've heard." Her words trailed off, leaving an uneasy silence hanging in the air like a fog. Inside, the house was a flurry of activity. Servants bustled about, their footsteps echoing on the polished floors. The air was thick with the mingled scents of beeswax polish and fresh flowers. Gabriel Betteredge, the old house steward, stood at the center of the storm, barking orders with an energy that belied his years. His weathered face creased with concern as he oversaw the preparations, one hand absently patting the pocket where his trusty copy of Robinson Crusoe resided, a talisman against the uncertainty that seemed to seep into every corner of the house. "Mark my words," Betteredge muttered to a cluster of wide-eyed servants, his voice low and gravelly, "that stone's got more stories than my old book here, and not all of them pleasant." The servants exchanged nervous glances, their excitement for the upcoming celebration now tinged with a palpable unease. As twilight descended on the estate, a new tension gripped the household. Word spread like wildfire of 3 mysterious Indian men, described as jugglers, spotted lurking on the outskirts of the property. Their presence, coinciding with the diamond's arrival, sent ripples of fear through the staff and locals alike. Rosanna Spearman, a maid with a past as checkered as the kitchen's floor tiles, felt her old instincts stirring. Her eyes darted nervously from shadow to shadow, her reformed thief's mind racing with possibilities and dangers. The Moonstone's presence seemed to awaken something in her, a mixture of fear and fascination that she couldn't quite shake. Night fell, and the Verinder estate stood like a ship on a stormy sea, its occupants tossed between waves of excitement and dread. The Moonstone, now safely ensconced within its walls, seemed to pulse with an energy of its own. Franklin could almost feel its weight, even from across the house, as if the legendary curse was whispering through the corridors like a chilling breeze. In the servants' hall, the staff huddled together, their voices hushed as they shared their fears about the diamond's presence and the potential danger it might bring. Outside, the wind picked up, rustling through the trees and carrying with it the faint, unsettling sound of distant music, a reminder of the mysterious jugglers whose intentions remained as obscure as the shadows in which they hid. As the clock struck midnight, marking the dawn of Rachel's birthday, a sudden hush fell over the estate. The air grew thick with anticipation, the calm before the storm. In the distance, a dog howled, its mournful cry piercing the night. Franklin, standing at his bedroom window, felt a shiver run down his spine. Tomorrow, the Moonstone would be presented to Rachel, and with it, the true nature of its curse might finally be revealed. As he turned from the window, a flicker of movement caught his eye, a shadow darting between the trees at the edge of the property. Was it one of the mysterious jugglers, or merely a trick of the moonlight? With his heart pounding, Franklin realized that Rachel's birthday celebration might bring far more than just joy and merriment. Rachel's birthday party burst into life, a dazzling spectacle of celebration and excitement. The event drew family and local gentry alike, all eager to partake in the joyous festivities. The grand hall hummed with energy, a symphony of laughter and chatter rising above the soft strains of music. Candlelight flickered, casting playful shadows that danced across the faces of the guests, their eyes sparkling with merriment. The air was thick with the mingling scents of perfume, warm bodies, and the sweet aroma of champagne. At the heart of it all stood Rachel, a vision in deep blue silk. Her smile radiated pure joy, lighting up the room more brilliantly than any candle. But it wasn't just her beauty that caught the eye. Around her neck hung the Moonstone, a diamond of unparalleled splendor. Its facets caught the light, scattering tiny rainbows across the room like magical confetti. The gem seemed to pulse with an inner fire, as if it were a living thing feeding off the energy of the party. Guests couldn't help but stare, their conversations inevitably turning to hushed whispers about the stone's mysterious history and breathtaking beauty. As the night wore on, Franklin Blake found himself increasingly drawn to Rachel. Their eyes met across the crowded room, and a spark of electricity passed between them. He watched, mesmerized, as she laughed, her head thrown back in carefree abandon. The Moonstone glittered at her throat, but to Franklin, it paled in comparison to the radiance of Rachel herself. With each passing moment, the attraction between them grew. It was like a delicate flower unfurling its petals in the warmth of the sun, fragile yet undeniable. Franklin's heart raced every time Rachel glanced his way, her eyes holding a promise of something more. The hours slipped by in a whirlwind of music, dancing, and laughter. As the last guests began to depart, Rachel made her way to her room, her cheeks flushed with happiness and perhaps a touch too much champagne. With careful hands, she removed the moonstone and locked it securely in her cabinet. The click of the key in the lock seemed to echo in the quiet room, a final punctuation to the evening's events. But the joy of the celebration was short-lived. The following morning, a scream shattered the peaceful dawn, seeming to shake the very foundations of the house. Rachel's voice, raw with panic and disbelief, echoed through the corridors. The moonstone. It's gone. In an instant, the household erupted into chaos. Servants scurried about like startled mice, their faces pale with fear. Lady Verinder, still in her dressing gown, rushed to her daughter's side, her usual composure cracking under the weight of the situation. Accusations flew like arrows, each more pointed than the last. Suspicious glances were cast, trust evaporating like morning dew under a harsh sun. The air grew thick with tension, every breath laden with unspoken accusations. In the midst of the turmoil, Lady Verinder summoned Superintendent Seagrave of the local police. His arrival brought a momentary hush to the household, like the eye of a storm. But that calm was short-lived. Seagrave, more accustomed to petty thefts than grand larceny, bumbled through his investigation like a bull in a china shop. His questions were blunt instruments, lacking the finesse needed to navigate the delicate social dynamics of the household. With each heavy-handed inquiry, the tension ratcheted up another notch. The servants, already on edge, wilted under Seagrave's scrutiny. Rosanna Spearman, her past hanging over her like a dark cloud, felt the weight of suspicion most keenly. Her shoulders hunched, her eyes darting nervously, she seemed to shrink into herself with each passing moment. But it was Rachel's behavior that truly baffled everyone. Instead of cooperating with the investigation, she met every question with stony silence or flashes of anger. Her sudden coldness towards Franklin was like a winter frost, withering the tender shoots of their budding romance. Franklin, bewildered and hurt, found himself adrift in a sea of confusion. As news of the theft spread beyond the walls of the house, it took on a life of its own. Whispers turned to murmurs, murmurs to outright gossip. The curse of the moonstone, once a fanciful tale, now seemed all too real. Fear and superstition began to take root in the fertile soil of uncertainty. And what of the 3 Indian jugglers, those mysterious figures who had lurked on the fringes of the celebration? They had vanished like smoke on the wind, leaving behind only questions and suspicions. Their disappearance added yet another layer to the already complex tapestry of the mystery, a dark thread weaving its way through the fabric of events. As the day wore on, the theft of the moonstone loomed large, casting a long shadow over the household and the community beyond. The diamond's absence seemed to create a void, a black hole that threatened to swallow up the peace and happiness that had reigned just hours before. With each passing hour, the local police found themselves more and more out of their depth. The clues were scarce, the suspects many, and the pressure mounting. As night fell once again, a sense of desperation settled over the Verinder estate. It was clear that they needed help, expert help. In the flickering candlelight of her study, Lady Verinder penned an urgent letter. Her hand trembled slightly as she wrote, her usually elegant script marred by the urgency of her task. She was calling for reinforcements, reaching out to a name whispered in awe in detective circles. As she sealed the envelope, she couldn't help but wonder, would even the famous Sergeant Cuff be able to unravel this baffling mystery? The local police had exhausted all leads in their investigation of the moonstone's disappearance. In a desperate attempt to crack the case, they called upon Sergeant Cuff, a renowned detective from London, to lend his expertise at the Verinder estate. As Cuff's carriage rumbled up the gravel driveway, a hush fell over the grounds. The air grew thick with anticipation, as if the very trees were holding their breath. Servants peeked through curtains, their whispers a soft rustle in the tense silence. The carriage door swung open, and out stepped Sergeant Cuff. He was a lean man, all angles and sharp edges, with eyes that seemed to pierce through flesh and bone. His gaze swept across the estate, taking in every detail with the precision of a hawk eyeing its prey. Without so much as a word of greeting, Cuff strode into the house, his footsteps echoing in the cavernous entrance hall. The household staff scurried out of his way, like mice fleeing a cat's approach. Betteredge, the loyal butler, stood his ground, his face a mask of polite concern hiding a storm of worry beneath. Cuff's investigation began like a whirlwind. He moved through the house with purpose, his keen eyes missing nothing. In the room where the moonstone had vanished, he dropped to his knees, examining the floor with a magnifying glass. His fingers traced the woodwork, probed the curtains, tapped at the walls. Each action was deliberate, methodical, yet tinged with an almost manic energy. The detective's unorthodox methods raised eyebrows and set tongues wagging. Maids huddled in corners, their hushed conversations cut short whenever Cuff appeared. Even the usually unflappable Betteredge found himself wrong-footed, struggling to keep up with the detective's rapid-fire questions and cryptic mutters. As Cuff delved deeper, three peculiarities caught his attention like burrs on a woolen coat. First, there was the smeared paint on Rachel's door, a detail so out of place it screamed for attention. Then came Rosanna Spearman's furtive behavior, her eyes darting about like a guilty conscience given form. But it was Rachel's stubborn silence that intrigued Cuff the most, a wall of secrecy as impenetrable as the Tower of London. The detective's piercing gaze seemed to strip away layers of pretense, leaving those he questioned feeling exposed and vulnerable. One by one, household members found themselves under Cuff's scrutiny. His questions were precise, cutting through pleasantries and social niceties like a hot knife through butter. As Cuff pieced together his theory, a palpable tension gripped the house. It hung in the air like a fog, seeping into every crack and crevice. The detective's suspicions, involving both Rachel and Rosanna, sent shockwaves through the household. Lady Verinder, her face a storm of conflicting emotions, bristled at the mere suggestion of her daughter's involvement. Her resistance was fierce and immediate, like a mother bear defending her cub. "I will not have you besmirching my daughter's name, Sergeant," she declared, her voice quivering with barely contained fury. Cuff's relentless pursuit of the truth began to take its toll. The household, once a picture of genteel harmony, now simmered with unspoken accusations and simmering resentments. Betteredge found himself torn between his loyalty to the family and his duty to assist the investigation. His weathered face creased with worry as he watched the detective's probing questions chip away at the facade of propriety. The shivering sand, a treacherous expanse of quicksand near the estate, drew Cuff's attention like a lodestone. Rosanna's frequent trips to this desolate spot puzzled him. He stood at the edge of the sand, watching the shifting, sucking earth with a mixture of fascination and unease. The unpredictable nature of the quicksand seemed to mirror the ever-changing landscape of the case. Despite his renowned expertise, Cuff found himself thwarted at every turn. Rachel's continued silence was maddening, a locked door behind which vital truths lay hidden. Lady Verinder's interference, though born of maternal instinct, was like a dam holding back the flow of his investigation. Days stretched into weeks, and frustration gnawed at Cuff like a persistent itch he couldn't scratch. The complex family dynamics at play were a labyrinth he couldn't navigate, each turn leading to another dead end. The truth seemed to dance just out of reach, taunting him with its elusiveness. Finally, with a heavy heart and a furrowed brow, Sergeant Cuff reluctantly admitted defeat. The case, like the Moonstone itself, remained shrouded in mystery. Before departing, he pulled Gabriel Betteredge aside, his voice low and intense. "Mark my words," Cuff said, his eyes glinting with certainty, "the truth will come to light. It always does, Mr. Betteredge. It's just a matter of time." As Cuff's carriage rolled away, the household watched in uneasy silence. The detective's departure should have brought relief, but instead, a new tension began to build. It was as if Cuff had left behind a smoldering ember, ready to ignite at any moment. The air grew thick with unspoken fears and suspicions, leaving everyone to wonder, what secrets would the coming days reveal? Sergeant Cuff's departure left an indelible mark on the Verinder estate. In his absence, a palpable tension began to permeate every corner of the grand house. The air grew thick with unspoken suspicions, whispered conversations abruptly halting as footsteps approached. Even the creaking of floorboards seemed to carry hidden meanings, as if the very house itself was keeping secrets. Rachel, once the vibrant heart of the household, underwent a transformation as stark as a flower wilting in winter's first frost. Her warm smiles and affectionate glances towards Franklin Blake vanished, replaced by a glacial coldness that seemed to freeze the very air between them. She moved through the rooms like a ghost, her silk skirts whispering against the carpets, her eyes skittering away from his like frightened birds. When she spoke, her words were clipped and distant, each syllable a tiny dagger aimed at Franklin's heart. Franklin, for his part, wore his confusion and hurt like a heavy cloak, his shoulders slumping under its invisible weight. His attempts to engage Rachel were met with stony silence or curt dismissals. "Rachel, please," he'd plead, his voice cracking with emotion. "What have I done?" But she'd turn away, leaving him grasping at shadows. The strain of the unresolved mystery of the Moonstone weighed on him, but it was the loss of Rachel's affection that truly broke his spirit. One evening, as the setting sun painted the library in hues of amber and gold, Franklin made a decision that felt like tearing out his own heart. "I'm leaving England," he announced to the empty room, his words hanging in the air like a death knell. He hoped distance might soothe the ache of his estrangement from the woman he loved, but the thought of being apart from Rachel was like imagining a world without color. As Franklin prepared for his departure, packing his belongings with leaden hands, another drama unfolded on the estate. Rosanna Spearman, the housemaid with a shadowy past, began to exhibit increasingly peculiar behavior. Her furtive glances and hushed conversations with herself did not go unnoticed by the ever-watchful Betteredge, whose bushy eyebrows furrowed deeper with each passing day. But it was Rosanna's clandestine trips to the Shivering Sand that truly raised alarm bells. The treacherous expanse of quicksand near the estate seemed to call to her like a siren song. She would stand at its edge, her slight figure a lonely silhouette against the vast, shifting landscape. The wind whipped her skirts and hair, but she remained still as a statue, as if communing with some unseen force. The staff whispered among themselves, their suspicions fueled by the knowledge of Rosanna's past as a reformed thief. The quicksand, they murmured behind cupped hands, it could swallow secrets as easily as it could swallow lives. Their words spread through the house like a noxious vapor, poisoning the air with doubt and fear. Lady Verinder, her face etched with worry lines that seemed to deepen with each passing hour, made a decision born of both concern and self-preservation. "We're going to London," she declared one morning, her voice brittle with forced cheerfulness. "A change of scenery will do us all good." Away from the prying eyes of the local gossips and the oppressive atmosphere of the estate, she hoped Rachel might find some peace, and perhaps the family might escape the tentacles of scandal that threatened to ensnare them. As preparations for their departure began, the household buzzed with activity and whispered conversations. Trunks were dragged from attics, their musty smell mingling with the scent of freshly polished silver and starched linens. At the center of this whirlwind of gossip was Miss Clack, Rachel's cousin and a woman whose religious fervor bordered on zealotry. Her eyes gleamed with a mixture of righteous indignation and barely concealed excitement as she flitted from servant to servant, her words a strange cocktail of pious pronouncements and salacious speculation about the theft. "It's a judgment upon us all," she'd proclaim, clutching her ever-present religious tracts to her chest. "But fear not, for even in our darkest hour, the light of salvation shines bright." The servants would nod politely, then roll their eyes the moment her back was turned. Amidst this chaos, Godfrey Ablewhite emerged as a pillar of stability and virtue. Another of Rachel's cousins and a potential suitor, he moved through the troubled household with an air of calm assurance. His words of comfort and offers of support seemed to soothe the frayed nerves of the family, his charitable nature a balm in these troubled times. "My dear Lady Verinder," he'd say, his voice as smooth as honey, "please let me know if there's anything I can do to help." His perfect smile never wavered, his kind eyes never betrayed a hint of ulterior motive. Yet, there was something in his too perfect demeanor, a certain calculation behind his benevolent gaze, that might have given a keen observer pause. As the main characters prepared to go their separate ways, Franklin to distant shores, Rachel and her mother to the bustling anonymity of London, and the others to their respective roles in the ongoing drama, the mystery of the Moonstone loomed large. It hung over the Verinder family and their household like a storm cloud, dark and ominous, promising more turbulence to come. The theft remained unsolved, a puzzle with pieces scattered to the wind. And as the characters dispersed, each carried with them a piece of the mystery, their secrets and suspicions intertwining like the threads of an intricate tapestry. The Moonstone's disappearance had set in motion a chain of events that would continue to unfold, its consequences reaching far beyond the confines of the Verinder estate, leaving a trail of broken relationships and unanswered questions in its wake. As the sun set on the final day before their departure, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns, a figure could be seen slipping out of the servants' entrance. It was Rosanna Spearman, her face a mask of determination and fear. She clutched something tightly to her chest as she hurried towards the Shivering Sand, her steps quickening with each passing moment. What secret was she about to bury in those treacherous depths? And would it remain hidden, or would the sands eventually give up their prize, bringing with it a tide of revelations that could shatter the fragile peace of the Verinder household forever? Rosanna Spearman's strange behavior had been intensifying for days. Now, it had reached a fever pitch, causing her to become increasingly distressed and isolated from the rest of the household. The grand house loomed over Rosanna like a silent judge, its long corridors echoing with whispers that seemed to follow her every move. She glided through the halls like a wraith, her eyes fixed on the polished floors, shoulders hunched as if carrying an invisible burden. The other servants' curious glances burned into her back, their hushed conversations falling silent as she passed. The weight of her secret pressed down on Rosanna's chest, making each breath a struggle. She had fallen hopelessly, irrevocably in love with Franklin Blake, the dashing gentleman whose mere presence set her heart racing. But it wasn't just unrequited love that tormented her, it was the knowledge she held about the night the Moonstone vanished. Every time Franklin's path crossed hers, Rosanna's world tilted on its axis. Her pulse quickened, her palms grew damp, and for a fleeting moment, hope blossomed in her chest. But reality always came crashing down, leaving her more desolate than before. She yearned to pour out her heart, to unburden herself of the terrible secret that gnawed at her soul. Yet fear paralyzed her tongue, and shame kept her silent. In her darkest hours, Rosanna found an unexpected lifeline in Limping Lucy, a local girl whose physical impairment belied her strength of spirit. Together, they would sit at the edge of the Shivering Sand, its ominous whispers a fitting backdrop to Rosanna's tumultuous thoughts. One evening, As the setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and purple, Rosanna's resolve finally crumbled. "I can't go on like this, Lucy," she whispered, her voice barely audible above the hiss of the shifting sands. "The weight of it all. It's crushing me." Lucy's calloused hand found Rosanna's trembling fingers, gripping them tightly. "You're stronger than you know, Rosanna," she said, her eyes filled with concern. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together." But even as Lucy's words washed over her, Rosanna knew in her heart that this was a burden she couldn't share. The decision she was about to make would change everything. That night, under the flickering light of a single candle, Rosanna poured her heart onto paper. Her quill scratched across the surface, detailing her discoveries about the night of the theft and confessing her love for Franklin. Each word was a plea, a confession, and a farewell all at once. With shaking hands, she sealed the letter in a tin case, her tears mingling with the still wet ink. As the first light of dawn broke over the horizon, Rosanna made her way to the shivering sand. The treacherous quicksand seemed to call to her, promising an end to her torment. Rosanna's mind raced as she carefully hid the tin case near the sand's edge. Would Franklin ever find it? Would he understand? The questions swirled in her mind like the grains of sand at her feet. Taking a deep breath, Rosanna stepped forward. The sand, cool and inviting, embraced her ankles. Another step, and it reached her knees. She closed her eyes, thinking of Franklin's smile one last time as the shivering sand claimed her, swallowing her whole in its shifting embrace. Days passed before anyone realized Rosanna was missing. The household buzzed with speculation and worry, the air thick with tension. It was limping Lucy who finally pieced together the tragic truth, her anguished cries echoing through the village as she shared the news of Rosanna's fate. The community reeled from the shock of Rosanna's suicide. Gabriel Betteredge, the old steward, felt the loss keenly, his weathered face etched with lines of grief and guilt. Limping Lucy was inconsolable, haunted by the memory of their last conversation, replaying every word in her mind, searching for clues she might have missed. As the dust settled, the mystery of the Moonstone seemed to deepen, taking on a more sinister hue. Rosanna's death added another layer of complexity to the already intricate case, leaving those involved grappling with a mix of guilt, suspicion, and unanswered questions. And somewhere near the shivering sand, a tin case lay hidden, its contents unknown, holding the key to Rosanna's true motives and the extent of her knowledge. The tragedy of Rosanna Spearman lingered like a shadow over the household, a constant reminder of the secrets that lay buried beneath the surface. As the sun set on another day, casting long shadows across the grounds, a sense of unease settled over the estate. Little did they know that Rosanna's death was just the beginning. For as the calendar pages turned and seasons changed, the mystery of the Moonstone would continue to haunt them all, its tendrils reaching far beyond that fateful night. A full year would pass and still, the diamond's disappearance remained an unsolved enigma. What dark secrets would the passage of time reveal? And how many more lives would be forever changed in the pursuit of the truth? A full year had passed since the Moonstone's mysterious disappearance. The diamond's vanishing act remained an unsolved enigma, casting a long dark shadow over the lives of all involved. The Verinder family's London residence, once a beacon of warmth and laughter, now stood as a silent monument to their shared grief. The very air seemed thick with unspoken words and heavy secrets, pressing down on the inhabitants like an invisible weight. Rachel Verinder, once the vibrant heart of the household, moved through the rooms like a wraith. Her eyes, once sparkling with mischief, now held a haunted look, as if she were constantly searching for something just beyond her reach. The soft rustle of her skirts against the polished floors was often the only sound that marked her passing. "Rachel, dear," Lady Verinder's voice quavered as she called out to her daughter one gloomy afternoon. "Won't you join me for tea?" Rachel paused, her hand resting on the banister. For a moment, it seemed she might refuse, but then she nodded, a ghost of a smile flickering across her face. Lady Verinder's own appearance had altered dramatically over the past year. Deep lines etched her once smooth forehead, and her hands trembled slightly as she poured the tea. The china cups clinked together, a jarring sound in the oppressive silence of the drawing room. "I've had a letter from Franklin," Lady Verinder said, her voice barely above a whisper. "He's in Egypt now." Rachel's head snapped up, her eyes suddenly alive with an emotion her mother couldn't quite name. Was it hope? Anger? Fear? Before Lady Verinder could decide, the spark was gone, leaving Rachel's face as impassive as ever. Miles away, at the Verinder country estate, life trudged on with a forced normalcy. Gabriel Betteredge, the old steward, kept the household running with clockwork precision. But even his unwavering dedication couldn't completely erase the shadow of the past. "It's not natural, I tell you," Betteredge muttered to Mrs. Penelope, the housekeeper, as they stood in the kitchen one evening. "A house this size should be full of life, not this." He gestured vaguely, encompassing the entire estate in one sweeping motion. Mrs. Penelope nodded sagely, her eyes darting to the windows as if expecting to see mysterious figures lurking in the gathering dusk. The whispers of the servants kept the memory of the theft alive, like a persistent ember refusing to be extinguished. Every creaking floorboard, every shadow at dusk, seemed to hold the promise of a revelation that never came. In London's bustling streets and glittering ballrooms, Godfrey Ablewhite cut a dashing figure. His charitable works had become the talk of society, his name spoken with reverence in drawing rooms across the city. "Mr. Ablewhite is such a comfort to the Veranders," one matron confided to another behind her fan. "So steady, so dependable. Unlike that Blake fellow, gallivanting across the continent." If Godfrey heard such whispers, he gave no sign. His smile remained as bright and reassuring as ever, a beacon of normalcy in a world turned upside down. In his cluttered office, Mr. Broof, the Verander family lawyer, pored over documents late into the night. The flickering lamplight cast dancing shadows on the walls as he muttered to himself, connecting invisible threads in his mind. "It's here somewhere," he mumbled, rifling through a stack of papers. "The key to it all. It has to be." As autumn gave way to winter, a chill settled over London that seemed to seep into the very bones of the city. In a small, nondescript boarding house, a group of men huddled around a table, speaking in hushed tones. "The diamond," one whispered, his dark eyes glittering in the dim light. "It must be found." The others nodded, their faces set with grim determination. Unbeknownst to the Veranders and their circle, the search for the Moonstone was far from over. As the year drew to a close, a letter arrived at the Verander residence. Lady Verander's hands shook as she broke the seal, her eyes widening as she read its contents. "Rachel," she called, her voice echoing through the silent house. "Rachel, come quickly." But before she could share the news, a commotion at the front door drew their attention. The butler appeared, his face pale with shock. "My lady," he stammered, "Mr. Franklin Blake has returned." The air in the house seemed to freeze, every breath held in anticipation. The mystery of the Moonstone, dormant for so long, was about to reignite with explosive force. Franklin Blake's heart pounded as he stepped onto English soil once more. He was driven by an unwavering determination to clear his name and unravel the enigma of the Moonstone. The familiar scent of damp earth and salty sea air enveloped him as he made his way through the bustling port. Seagulls cried overhead, their mournful calls echoing his inner turmoil. Each step on the cobblestone streets brought him closer to the truth he so desperately sought, yet a heavy cloud of unease settled over him like a shroud. As Franklin journeyed towards his destination, the world around him seemed to blur. The chatter of dockworkers and the clanging of ship bells faded into the background, replaced by the thundering of his own thoughts. Questions and theories whirled in his mind like leaves caught in a storm. Upon his arrival, he was met with news that sent ice through his veins. Rosanna Spearman, the enigmatic housemaid, had taken her own life. The weight of this tragedy pressed upon him, mingling with the guilt of unresolved questions. Franklin's breath caught in his throat as he processed this information, his mind reeling with the implications. But there was more. A letter, Rosanna's final words, lay hidden, holding secrets that could unravel everything. The very air around him seemed to thicken with anticipation. With a mixture of trepidation and urgency, Franklin sought out limping Lucy, Rosanna's closest friend. He found her in a small, dimly lit cottage, the air heavy with the scent of grief. Lucy's eyes, filled with a storm of sorrow and resentment, bore into him as he pleaded for her help. Each word felt like gravel in his mouth as he explained his need to find Rosanna's letter. Reluctantly, Lucy agreed to assist, her every movement a testament to her inner turmoil. As they set out together, the sky darkened ominously, mirroring the gravity of their mission. They ventured to the shivering sand, a place that seemed to breathe with its own ominous life. The wind whipped around them, carrying whispers of secrets long buried. Sand stung Franklin's eyes and skin as he carefully made his way to the spot Lucy indicated. The ground beneath his feet shifted treacherously, as if trying to reclaim the truth it had guarded. With trembling hands, Franklin retrieved the letter from its hiding place. The paper felt fragile in his grasp, as if it might crumble and take its secrets with it. He unfolded it carefully, each crease revealing another line of Rosanna's neat handwriting. As Franklin read, the world around him faded away. Each word was a dagger, piercing through his certainty and shaking the very foundation of his beliefs. Rosanna's confession unfurled like a dark flower. She had discovered evidence that implicated him in the theft of the Moonstone. The letter spoke of his own nightgown, stained with paint from Rachel's door on the night of the theft. Franklin's mind reeled, unable to reconcile this information with his own memories. How could he have taken the diamond without any recollection? The very notion seemed absurd, yet the evidence was undeniable. Stunned and reeling, Franklin grappled with this new reality. His mind, once so sure of his innocence, now became a battlefield of doubt and confusion. The sand beneath his feet seemed to mirror his inner turmoil, shifting and changing with each passing moment. Determined to uncover the truth, Franklin embarked on a journey through the labyrinth of that fateful night. He sought out members of the household, his conversations with them like pieces of a complex puzzle slowly coming together. Betteredge, the old steward, provided insights that were both illuminating and perplexing, each revelation adding another layer to the mystery. As Franklin delved deeper into his investigation, he found himself questioning not just the events of that night, but his own mind and memory. The boundaries between truth and illusion began to blur, leaving him adrift in a sea of uncertainty. Every shadow seemed to hide a clue, every casual remark a potential key to unlocking the truth. Then came the most staggering revelation of all. Rachel had witnessed him taking the diamond. This knowledge hit Franklin like a physical blow, simultaneously clarifying and complicating the situation. It explained Rachel's sudden coldness towards him, a change that had wounded him deeply. The memory of her eyes, once filled with love and now clouded with distrust, haunted him. As night fell, Franklin sat alone in his room, the weight of these discoveries pressing upon him like a physical presence. The moonlight streaming through the window cast eerie shadows, each one seeming to mock his confusion. He was left grappling with a truth that seemed impossible, yet undeniable. The path forward was shrouded in mystery, but Franklin knew one thing with certainty: he would not rest until he uncovered the full explanation for his apparent actions. As he stared out into the darkness, a plan began to form in his mind. He would recreate the conditions of that fateful night, step by step, moment by moment. With renewed determination, Franklin rose from his chair, his heart racing with a mixture of fear and anticipation. Whatever the truth might be, he was ready to face it head-on. Franklin Blake's determination to uncover the truth behind the Moonstone's disappearance burned like a fever. With unwavering resolve, he set out to recreate the conditions of that fateful night when the precious gem vanished into thin air. The drawing room of the Verinder estate crackled with tension as Franklin shared his startling discovery. His voice trembled slightly, betraying the weight of his revelation. On the evening of Rachel's birthday, I was unknowingly given a dose of laudanum by Mr. Candy, our local doctor. The assembled group gasped collectively, their faces a mixture of shock and disbelief. Franklin's hands clenched and unclenched as he continued. The opium-based remedy was meant to cure my insomnia, but instead, it set in motion a chain of events that has haunted us all for months. Driven by an insatiable need for answers, Franklin's mind raced with possibilities. His eyes, bright with determination, scanned the faces of those around him. "I have a plan," he announced, his voice steady despite the butterflies in his stomach. "I will test the effects of the drug on my behavior, hoping to unlock the memories buried deep within my subconscious." To assist him in this daring experiment, Franklin turned to an unlikely ally, Ezra Jennings, Mr. Candy's enigmatic assistant. Jennings stood apart from the others, his mixed-race heritage and unconventional appearance making him an outcast in their small community. Yet, as their eyes met, Franklin saw a kindred spirit in the man's intense gaze. Together, they meticulously recreated the scene in Rachel's bedroom. The air was thick with the scent of furniture polish and the faint aroma of Rachel's perfume, a ghostly reminder of that night a year ago. Franklin's heart pounded in his chest, each beat a countdown to the moment of truth. As Franklin prepared to take the laudanum, the room seemed to hold its breath. The liquid burned his throat as he swallowed, and almost immediately, a strange weightlessness overcame him. The world began to shift and blur, colors becoming more vivid and sounds more intense. It was as if he were viewing everything through a kaleidoscope of memories and sensations. Observed by the watchful eyes of Jennings and the ever-loyal Betteredge, Franklin's consciousness began to slip away. In its place, a dreamlike state transported him back in time. His body moved of its own accord, like a marionette controlled by invisible strings. His steps were unsteady, his movements jerky and unpredictable. In this state of sleepwalking, Franklin reached out and grasped a replica of the Moonstone. The false gem glinted in the dim light, its facets reflecting 1,000 watchful eyes. With eerie precision, he concealed the replica, his actions mirroring what must have transpired with the real diamond a year ago. The onlookers watched in stunned silence, the truth of that night finally revealed in this surreal reenactment. The air in the room felt electric, charged with the weight of this revelation. As Franklin emerged from his drug-induced trance, reality crashed over him like a tidal wave. The realization settled upon him, heavy as a burial shroud. He had indeed taken the Moonstone while under the influence of opium, his actions as unconscious as they were unintentional. This revelation explained both his lack of memory and Rachel's subsequent cold behavior towards him. The pieces of the puzzle finally fell into place with a satisfying click, but the picture they formed was far from comforting. The experiment had provided a crucial breakthrough, clearing Franklin of intentional wrongdoing but raising new, pressing questions. Where had he hidden the real Moonstone? And who had taken it from its hiding place? These questions hung in the air, unanswered and ominous. As the implications of their discovery sank in, a palpable shift occurred between Franklin and Rachel. The truth of his innocence, now laid bare, began to melt the icy barrier that had formed between them. Their eyes met across the room, a silent understanding passing between them. It was tinged with regret for the time lost and hope for what might still be salvaged. The revelation brought them closer to reconciliation, the misunderstandings of the past year slowly dissolving in the light of this new truth. As they stood there, surrounded by the remnants of their experiment, Franklin and Rachel found themselves on the cusp of a new chapter, one filled with the promise of healing and the possibility of rekindled love. But as the night wore on and the initial shock of the revelation began to fade, a new, unsettling thought crept into Franklin's mind. If he had taken the moonstone while sleepwalking, where exactly had he hidden it? And more importantly, who else might have known about his unconscious actions that night? As he looked around the room at the faces of those he trusted, a chilling realization dawned on him. The true culprit might be closer than any of them had ever imagined. The mystery of the moonstone's disappearance had finally been solved. Franklin Blake, under the influence of opium, had unknowingly taken the diamond from Rachel Verander's room. The drawing room of the Verender estate was bathed in a soft, golden light that seemed to mock the gravity of the situation. Franklin and Rachel stood facing each other, their eyes locked in a mixture of relief and determination. The air around them crackled with an electric tension, a palpable energy that spoke of unfinished business. Rachel's voice broke the silence, steady but tinged with urgency. "We must retrace every step, every moment following that night." Her words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of their implications. Franklin nodded, his brow furrowed in concentration. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair, trying to piece together the fragmented memories that danced just out of reach. The ticking of the grandfather clock in the corner seemed to grow louder, a constant reminder of the time slipping away. Their investigation led them down a winding path, each turn revealing new surprises. Like detectives peeling back layers of an onion, they focused on the hours immediately following Franklin's opium-induced actions. The musty smell of old ledgers and the rustle of papers filled the air as they pored over documents, searching for clues. Suddenly, a crucial detail emerged from the fog of uncertainty. Godfrey Ablewhite, Rachel's cousin and former suitor, had been the last person to see Franklin on that fateful night. The revelation sent a chill down Rachel's spine, her breath catching in her throat. "Godfrey," she whispered, her voice barely audible. The name hung in the air like a storm cloud, dark and foreboding. Franklin's eyes widened, his mind racing. "It can't be," he muttered, but even as the words left his lips, doubt crept in like a thief in the night. With the help of Mr. Bruff, the family lawyer, they delved deeper into Godfrey's past. The sharp-minded solicitor cut through deception like a hot knife through butter, uncovering a web of financial intrigue that left them reeling. As they pored over ledgers and bank statements, a pattern emerged like a constellation in the night sky. Suspicious financial transactions in the days following the moonstone's disappearance pointed an accusing finger at Godfrey. The pieces of the puzzle began to fall into place with a sickening clarity. Rachel sank into a nearby chair, her face pale with shock. "Godfrey, of all people," she murmured, shaking her head in disbelief. The man who had presented himself as a paragon of virtue and charity now stood revealed as a desperate thief. Franklin paced the room, his footsteps echoing in the tense silence. "He must have found me with the diamond," he said, his voice barely above a whisper, and seized the opportunity to solve his financial troubles in one fell swoop. As they delved deeper into Godfrey's past, they uncovered a masterful manipulation that left them reeling. Like a skilled illusionist, he had crafted a reputation so sterling that it deflected suspicion like a shield. His charitable works and pious demeanor now seemed like nothing more than smoke and mirrors, designed to conceal his true nature. The full extent of Godfrey's deception unfolded before them like a dark, twisted tapestry. The elaborate scheme he had constructed to cover his tracks was a testament to his cunning and desperation. Franklin and Rachel found themselves caught in a whirlwind of emotions, anger at the betrayal, admiration for the audacity, and a grim determination to see justice done. As night fell, casting long shadows across the room, Franklin and Rachel exchanged a look of resolve. They had uncovered the truth, but their journey was far from over. The weight of their discovery hung heavy in the air, a burden they now had to bear. Little did they know that their revelation about Godfrey Ablewhite's theft of the moonstone was about to set in motion a chain of events that would shake London to its very core. As they prepared to face the consequences of their discovery, a storm was brewing on the horizon, ready to unleash its fury upon the unsuspecting city. The truth about Godfrey Ablewhite's theft of the moonstone had finally come to light. This revelation set in motion a chain of events that would shake London to its core. A thick fog rolled through the streets of London, cloaking the city in an eerie shroud. The gas lamps flickered weakly, their light barely penetrating the murky gloom. In this shadowy world, three figures moved with purpose, their dark eyes gleaming with a fervent intensity. These were the Indian jugglers, now revealed as Brahmin priests, their every step driven by an unwavering dedication to recover their sacred diamond. The city's labyrinthine alleys became a hunting ground, with Godfrey Ablewhite as the prey. Once a respected gentleman, he now skulked in the shadows, a hunted man. His clothes, once pristine, hung loosely on his frame, testament to the toll his deception had taken. Every sound made him flinch, every shadow seemed to harbor a threat. In a dilapidated boarding house, Godfrey huddled in a corner, his nerves frayed to breaking point. The floorboards creaked ominously, and the wind whispered against the grimy window like accusing voices. His heart pounded so loudly he was sure it would give him away. The door exploded inward with a resounding crack. Godfrey's scream died in his throat as the Brahmins surged into the room, their robes billowing like the wings of avenging angels. The air crackled with tension as they fell upon him, their quest for the Moonstone overriding any semblance of mercy. The struggle was brief but brutal. Furniture splintered, glass shattered, and in the chaos, Godfrey's life slipped away. His final breath was a whimper of fear and regret, lost in the din of the fray. As the echo of violence faded, the shrill wail of police whistles pierced the night. The Brahmins, their hands stained with blood but their eyes alight with triumph, scrambled to escape. The Moonstone, that cursed jewel that had caused so much strife, was clutched tightly in their grasp. The London police burst onto the scene, their boots thundering on the worn floorboards. They found Godfrey's lifeless body sprawled across the floor, his unseeing eyes reflecting the flickering gaslight. The room told the tale of the desperate struggle, overturned furniture, shattered glass, and dark stains spreading across the threadbare carpet. A frantic chase ensued through the fog-shrouded streets. The Brahmins' robes billowed behind them as they raced through narrow alleys, the precious diamond hidden somewhere on their persons. The police gave pursuit, their shouts echoing off the brick walls of the sleeping city. It was a scene straight out of a penny dreadful, exotic priests fleeing through the misty streets of London, pursued by the city's finest. The chase ended in a tangle of limbs and shouts as the Brahmins were finally apprehended. Yet, even as they were clapped in irons, a glimmer of satisfaction shone in their eyes. The Moonstone had vanished, secreted away in the confusion. The murder of Godfrey Ablewhite became the talk of London overnight. Newspapers plastered the story across their front pages, reviving the saga of the Moonstone for a public hungry for scandal. In crowded pubs and elegant drawing rooms alike, people pored over every detail, speculating wildly about the twists and turns of the case. As the police delved deeper into the circumstances surrounding Godfrey's death, the full extent of his duplicity came to light. Each new revelation was more damning than the last, unraveling a web of lies and betrayal that left even the most jaded detectives shaking their heads in disbelief. For Franklin Blake and Rachel Verinder, the truth brought a bittersweet vindication. The shadow of suspicion that had hung over them for so long was finally lifted, but at a terrible cost. They found themselves at the center of a storm of public interest, their every move scrutinized and dissected. Rachel's eyes, once bright with love, now held a haunted look, while Franklin's shoulders seemed to bear the weight of their ordeal. The capture of the Indian priests added yet another layer to the already complex tale. As they were questioned, the depth of their dedication to recovering the Moonstone became clear. Their unwavering pursuit, spanning years and continents, spoke of a cultural significance that went beyond mere monetary value. The detectives found themselves grappling with concepts of faith and duty that transcended their understanding of the law. This dramatic conclusion to Godfrey's part in the story brought a sense of justice, but also raised profound questions. The Moonstone, it seemed, was more than just a precious stone, it was a symbol of cultural identity, a focal point for clashing worldviews. The lengths to which people would go to possess or protect it spoke volumes about the power of belief and the weight of tradition. As the dust settled on this latest chapter in the Moonstone's tumultuous history, one thing became clear: the story of the sacred diamond was far from over. Its influence continued to ripple outward, touching lives and shaping destinies in ways that no one could have foreseen. Just as the city began to catch its breath, a new whisper started to circulate. Rumors of a breakthrough in the case spread like wildfire through the streets of London. Had the Moonstone finally been found? As night fell once more, the city held its breath, waiting for the dawn to reveal the next twist in this extraordinary tale. The Moonstone, that enigmatic gem of countless tales, was finally recovered by the authorities. They found it nestled in its hiding place, a silent witness to the tumultuous events that had unfolded in London. A collective sigh of relief rippled through the city as news spread of Godfrey Ablewhite's murder being solved and his role as the thief confirmed. The weight of suspicion that had hung heavy over so many shoulders began to lift, replaced by a tentative hope for closure. In the stuffy confines of the courtroom, tension crackled like static electricity. Lawyers' voices rose and fell, their arguments weaving a complex tapestry of legalities surrounding the diamond's ownership. The air grew thick with anticipation as the judge deliberated, his furrowed brow a testament to the gravity of the decision before him. When the verdict finally came, it fell upon the assembled crowd like a thunderclap. The Moonstone would return to India, its birthplace and rightful home. Murmurs of surprise and approval rippled through the gallery, a tide of whispers that washed over Franklin Blake and Rachel Verinder where they sat, hands clasped tightly together. Their eyes met, a silent conversation passing between them. In that moment, surrounded by the buzz of the courtroom, they made a decision that would alter the course of their lives. With voices steady and resolute, they volunteered to accompany the Diamond on its journey back to its homeland. The days that followed were a whirlwind of preparation. Franklin and Rachel's London home became a hive of activity, trunks and cases scattered across every surface. Each item they packed was a reminder of the life they were leaving behind and the adventure that lay ahead. The air hummed with a mixture of excitement and trepidation, the Moonstone's presence a constant, unseen force shaping their every move. As they boarded the ship that would carry them across vast oceans, the reality of their decision began to sink in. The coastline of England faded into the misty horizon, a sight that tugged at their hearts even as it filled them with anticipation. They stood on the deck, the salt spray kissing their faces, the creaking of the ship's timbers a constant reminder of the journey ahead. During the long days at sea, Franklin and Rachel found solace in each other's company. They walked the decks arm in arm, their conversations a tapestry of reflection and hope. The events of the past months unfolded between them like the pages of a well-worn book, each retelling bringing new insights and understanding. Laughter echoed across the waves as they shared memories, and quiet moments of contemplation were punctuated by the gentle lapping of water against the hull. As the ship drew closer to India, the air grew heavy with anticipation. The first sight of land on the horizon sent a thrill through the passengers, none more so than Franklin and Rachel. The bustling ports came into view, a riot of color and sound that overwhelmed the senses. The scent of spices and incense wafted across the water, a tantalizing preview of the world they were about to enter. They disembarked into a sea of humanity, the noise and heat a stark contrast to the quiet of their ocean voyage. Representatives of the temple met them, their faces solemn and eyes filled with reverence for the stone's return. The journey to the temple was like stepping back in time, the ancient streets whispering secrets of ages past. Franklin and Rachel found themselves caught up in the flow of history, mere droplets in a river that had been flowing for millennia. At last, they arrived at the temple, its spires reaching towards the heavens like fingers grasping for the divine. The air was thick with incense and the low hum of prayers, a constant drone that seemed to vibrate in their very bones. In a ceremony steeped in tradition and spirituality, the moonstone was carefully placed back into the forehead of the statue of the Hindu moon god. As the diamond settled into its rightful place, a collective sigh seemed to ripple through the temple. The prophecy fulfilled, the long and turbulent journey of the moonstone had come to an end. Franklin and Rachel stood hand in hand, witnesses to this moment of cosmic significance. The weight of the stone's influence, which had hung over them for so long, seemed to lift, leaving them lighter than they had felt in months. In the aftermath of the ceremony, they searched the crowds for the three Brahmin guardians who had played such a pivotal role in the Moonstone story. But like shadows at noon, the guardians had vanished, their sacred duty finally complete. It was as if they had been spirits, manifesting only to see their task through to its end. With hearts both heavy and light, Franklin and Rachel began their journey back to England. They left behind the cursed diamond and the weight of its influence, their steps lighter and their spirits buoyed by the promise of a future together. As the shores of India receded, they stood on the deck of the ship, the warm breeze tousling their hair. They looked to the horizon, ready to write the next chapter of their lives, free from the shadow of the moonstone. The setting sun painted the sky in hues of orange and pink, a fitting backdrop to the end of their adventure. Franklin pulled Rachel close, their silhouettes merging into one as they faced the future together. The Moonstone story had come full circle, and with it, a new beginning dawned for the two who had been caught in its orbit. As the stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Franklin and Rachel shared a kiss, sealing their love and the promise of adventures yet to come.